Well, so how have you been enjoying your COVID holidays? Everybody been enjoying them? It's funny, eh? You know, there's this real polarization. We go one way or the other. Some of us, we move a bit like what Russell just said, there may be a fence in the middle, but it's all the same paddock. We're just standing on different sides. So, I just wanted to begin this morning. I'm not sure if it's two topics. I think it may be one that's just stretched into two sessions. But this morning I want to talk about. I actually thought that COVID was my big opportunity. See, because they made all the announcements and they said, so it's going to start from this day. And just 2 weeks before that, I'd been sitting and talking with Sonia about. I said to her, I wonder if stress, I wonder if exhaustion, I wonder if tiredness is cumulative. I wonder if you can sort of, I was worn out then, and then I was tired again, and then I went to do it, now I'm really exhausted. I wonder if that can accumulate even in terms of ministry. See, we've been talking about this for so long, we've been doing this for so long. Oh, Father, maybe COVID is just going to give us some time out and just catch up. So 2 weeks before lockdown, first lockdown, I was sitting talking with Sonia and I said, I wonder if this exhaustion, I wonder if this tiredness, this weariness that I feel, if I could sleep for a week, I think I would. It just sounded like a random comment, typical, Psalm or luxury holiday dreams. If I could sleep for a week, I would. And so, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, this is it, guys. Can't go anywhere, there's no official role in your household. It's who is the designated shopper. And that was me, and I'd already done the shopping, so, day one came along, because, being the designated shopper, I went before the day, so we could, stock up. Because you anticipate lots of movies are coming, so you don't buy food necessarily, you just buy popcorn and chips, and a range of dips and all that stuff, because it's going to be, it's going to be a movie marathon, basically. And so we're anticipating 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and then it'll be all over and then we're back. See? The first day of lockdown, I'm lying in bed, and I'm just, I feel 8 o'clock, and this thought comes to me and said, you said, if you had the opportunity, you would sleep for a week. So I just thought, nobody knows, nobody's watching, nobody's checking up on me, nobody can drive up the driveway because you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to go visit, so pastor's not going to come around, police are not going to visit, nobody's going to know, so I just closed my eyes and rolled over and went back to sleep. Awesome. I thought I'm going to wake up a week later. 10 o'clock, woke up again. Oh man, it must be late, it must be 10 o'clock, it's so much later. I've only slept for 2 hours. So I thought, no, I must be able to get into the rhythm of it, so I just, because, good Psalm was good learners, you see, if at first you don't succeed, go back to sleep. So I just kind of rolled over the other side. Woke up again, 12 o'clock. And I just thought, man, this is harder than I thought. This is too hard. So I got up and came down, and I think I tried again the next day. Maybe I got up to 10:30 the next day, but I just couldn't stay in bed. And all of a sudden, you see, Father began to speak to me, and he said, this exhaustion, you see, that you carry, Frank, it is accumulative, but it's not a physical accumulation that you're able to balance out by just having physical rest. So, there's the thing that I noticed in the first 2 days was, there's a little voice in the back of your head, even at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know what it says? Get up, man. Get up. You're supposed to. I know you're thinking that you could sleep for a week, but you should do this. And now you've got this time, why don't you do that? You could do that, you're supposed to do that. That could have been that. You said you were going to do that. So I wrestle with it, go back to sleep, 10 o'clock, get back up, and you know what? That voice is there again. What are you doing lying down, you lazy bugger? You're just lucky nobody can come and visit because they catch you. They come, you know, they see that you're bed. You know what they're going to think, eh? You know what they're going to think. They're going to make all these assumptions about who you are and how you live your life because you're a lazy so-and-so. So, I wrestled with that. And I went back to sleep. But by 12 o'clock, now it's just, get up, man, get up. See? And you know the thing that the Father said to me? He said, the reason why it's a cumulative, Frank, is because the thing that keeps you going, the thing that keeps driving you, isn't the physical nature of what you do. It's the fact that there is an inner voice, there are some things that have been written on your heart that have become the laws. You're the eldest son, so you should do this. You're Samoan, so you should do this. You're Māori, so you should do that. You're a Christian, so you should be doing this. You've got all this time off, so you know you should go and do that thing that you said you were going to do for the last 3 months. Well, get up and go and do it then. And I realise, that the drivenness that comes, the exhaustion isn't because of the physical list of to-do things, it's the things that have been described, that have been told to us, and that have, in a sense, have been written on our hearts because we believe it. I believe I should, and I believe I'm supposed to, and I believe I have to, and I believe I must. You know, my first encounter with Fatherhood Ministries was in 2004. Sonia and I were living in Canada. James and Denise Jordan wanted us to come to a conference. And we'd just been to another, I think the last ministry event that we went to, there was a guy that was praying for people, and he had others who helped him. As he prayed, people would fall. And so they would catch, and I thought all these books would be the catches, and because they have catches. Some of them have catches that lay downers, they catch them and just kind of ease them in. Some of them have catches that push them back up. I don't know if you noticed that. Well, these were, I thought they were catches, they look like catches, but he said, no, these are stand-uppers. These are hold them up, because we want them to get everything that God has. So, the formula is, blessed are those who stand up for the whole time, because they will receive everything that God has to give to them, only as they stand up. And so in order to help them get everything that they need to get, we have assigned people who understand that this process of standing up is absolutely essential for the receiving of what God has to give to you. We have to be upstanding. So I'm standing somewhere along the line, and they are praying for people who are trying to fall down. Some of them tried to fall down before even the praying got to them. But the catching, stand-upper people, they were just going, hey, hang on. Wait till they pray, because we've got to get everything that God has for you. So that was the last conference that we've been to, and then I went to this thing with James and Denise Jordan, and they were sharing on the rest of God. See, and so then James and a bunch of guys started walking around the room praying for people. I thought, they must be his stand-uppers. The only thing is, I never saw them actually hold up anybody. They would make sure they didn't hurt themselves. They would, lay them down. They needed to be laid down. They would go with the ladies. They would put a blanket over them, or they would put a pillow under their head. And then they would, hold their hands if they were, waving about a bit. The Pentecostals that were being prayed for. And so, but they were very, very gentle, and the other guys didn't say anything. And so, as they're going around the room, I'm trying my best to say stand-upper, because that's what's ingrained in me. Blessed are those who stand, for they shall receive more. Because if you fall down prematurely, you're probably only going to get half. Maybe a third, maybe even a quarter. Because that seems to be the position to receive it. Every now and again, my eyes would catch James's eyes as he's looking across, because he's making his way around the room. It's not too different to this, they're just praying, I'm sitting over here, but as they're praying for different ones, I am sliding down the cupboard, I'm trying to hold onto a chair, I'm going to hold somebody next to me. I'm trying to, lean on the back of a chair. The problem is that the chairs they gave were too low, so, I'd have to lean down here. And it just looked rude, just kind of, so I just kind of faint away to the side. And I could see Jimmy now and again, he'd look at me, just a smile on his face, it's not a but I thought, yes, I need you to see this. Just pay attention, do what you're doing over here. I'm trying my best. I'll be ready. When you get here, I will be ready. Needless to say, by the time you got to me, I had basically melted down the side of the thing and just sort of a little pool of, Frank Naea lying on the floor. And there was really no capacity for me to stand up. And, and dead weight is really heavy weight. So these guys that were coming, they were, they're big guys, but they're not that big. They can see them rehearsing in scripture. Where the tree falls, there let it lie. So I'm just, but I'm crying in disappointment because I couldn't stand up. I'm crying because the last message that was written on my heart is, blessed are those who stand, for they shall receive the fullness of what God has. Seems like a simple message, but I remember the guy preaching it. I remember how they practiced it. I remember how they ministered it. And it was significant what was happening in the room. So I took that along with so many other things that I've taken and let it be written here. Until it became an expectation even of myself about myself. So you see, when I'm lying in bed in Togo and see there's this, Frank, if you really want to bless you, get up, man. What the heck are you doing lying there? If you really want what you want to get, then you've got to do your part. Have you heard that? You've got to do your part. It's another lie, by the way. It's an expectation that there's something about the goodness and the grace of God that's conditional on you doing your part. You do realise that's what our part is? It's actually to lie down. It's actually to not do anything. It's to surrender, it's to yield, it's to let go, it's to give up. How many Christian messages have you heard that you should give up? Hardly any. Most of them are that you should try harder. You should go again. You should man up. See? Because that's what you're supposed to do. Oh, and see, he's the first time, but he's way ahead of the rest of us. First thing he does is come and says, where's the couch? Where's the couch? And his wife confirms it. Oh, honey, you should come and lie over here on this couch. I've never heard my wife say that to me. But it's a new day. It's a new season. We're having new revelation. So James and his band of leave him where he is on the floor, they arrive, and I'm just crying. I'm crying because once again, in all of my endeavours and all of my trying, I have failed. I can't even stand up. How useless is that? They didn't ask me to say anything. They didn't ask me to declare anything. They didn't ask me to pray anything. They didn't ask me anything. It's just that I can't even do what they haven't even asked me yet. How big of a failure is that? So I'm lying on the floor, I'm crying, and James comes up to me, and because he knows me, you see, he kneels down beside me and puts his hand on my chest, and he says, oh, Frank. And he laughs. I try to laugh, but I can't help it. He's all Frank, so full of trying. It's the last message I hear. It's the last try hard. But my shocking exceeding glory is the real fun. Those who don't try at all get nothing. Oh, no wonder I'm not receiving anything. I'm disqualified before it even begins. James just leans down to me and he whispers in my ear and he says this, he says, Frank, don't you think that God is more committed to giving to you than you are at trying to give from him? So So at the beginning of COVID, I'm lying in bed and I'm just remembering that story. And I've slept in for 4 hours, and it doesn't seem to have done me any good at all. It's not worth a hill of beans, you know. So far, all I have now is 4 hours of condemnation, accusation, blame, guilt, shame. You know, even though nobody's watching, I can hear this voice say, shame, shame me. Look at you, grow around. Preaching, teaching, or Father, how of God. What happens first chance you get? You do nothing. You just stay in bed. Where does it say that in the Bible? So, over the course of the next few days, Father just leads me to this particular passage. It's in Hebrews 4, and it just says, for the man who has entered into the rest of God has ceased from his own works. Said, yeah, well, it sounds good, Father, but I was trying to cease from my own works. I tried lying down, but there's this nagging voice in the back of my head that says, get up, man. Get up, man. You shouldn't be. You're supposed to be. I know you're the designated shop, but that's not your only job, friend. You've got a whole list of other things that you could be. Have you been praying for the others? Have you been fasting for the others? Have you been, see, all this whole list of things that I should be doing, supposed to be doing, have to be doing, must be doing, because the other one was a lot of time that's available. Perfect! Why wouldn't God say to me in that time, pray more, read more, study more, write more, do this, do that, you see? So I'm condemned just by lying down. He said, but, he said, this is the secret, friend. There's a little passage in Genesis 3 and verse 11 that's really, really simple. God is talking about this change in the heart of humanity. There was a time when he would come and they would just walk and talk. Sometimes they would just lie down on the grass. Sometimes they would just look up at the sky and would ask him a million questions and he would give them a million answers. Sometimes they just enjoyed being together. He didn't come with a list and say, you fellas been praying? Have you read the book? I know it's not been written yet, but have you been doing any reading at all? No? If you're not reading, have you been writing? Have you been doing some writing? There's no expectations. There's no anticipation in the heart of God that you should, or you must, or you have. There isn't. And he just said this to me. Genesis 3 verse 11, he just said, who told you that you shouldn't? I said, well, stand up, and the guy was praying for all the people, and he said, if you don't stand up, then you won't get all of what I get for you. See, he and who else told you? How many of you are the oldest in your family? Sometimes you see, you don't even need to be told, but you know there are some things, because you're the oldest in the family, that you are supposed to do, have to do, should have done. You know, I don't need to tell you you're the oldest. Have you heard that line before? Or words to that effect? You know? See, it falls into the category of things that we call expectations and obligations. They're the things that are the hopes and desires, the decrees, the laws, the expectations, the anticipation of all these other people that we have been encountering in our lifetime, and they have written little one-liners that have become part of what's written in your heart. And you know, when we enter into the rest of God, those are the works that we cease to do. We're laying down the expectation that somebody has that I should. But you see, according to the nature of God and who he is, you see, he says, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. God gave his only Son. And it sounds just like a verse from the Bible, because it is. But you see, All the years that I've known that verse and read that verse, I have never understood what he's actually trying to say. So don't you realize, Frank said, before the foundation of the world, I gave you my sons, and Christ crucified before and even the end. He said, when I say to you, while you were yet sinners, I chose you. He said, I didn't choose you because of your good behavior. And when I chose you, I didn't say I'm choosing you as long as you follow us through this and this and this. And I'm choosing you. In Jeremiah, there's this incredible expression of the heart of God towards the nation of Israel. And you know what he says? He says, I thought that in response to the things that I've been doing to you, I thought that you would call me Father. No, but that's not an expectation, is it? He said, no, it's a hope. You know why it's a hope? Because it's a hope in the heart of the Father. It's not an expectation towards you. While we were yet sinners, unconditional, there was no clause that says as long as you respond to me, as long as you do good in return, as long as you lay down and give me your life, as long as you, see, there is no as long as you. This love is not dependent on you. You see, the nature of love is that love hopes all things, whether you do or not. See? Love believes all things. Love trusts. Love endures all things, but none of those things actually have a clause of expectation on you, because at the end it says this, love never fails. And for a long time I've always read that as being love never fails to accomplish what it's trying to accomplish, but that's not what it says. You know what it says? Love never fails to love. But whether you do or not, love is not deciding whether or not it will love based on what your response is. It says you can run away, you can hide, you can spit in my face, you can shout back at me, you can bang the ceiling, you can jump up and down, you can write letters of protest, you can march around the building, you can do whatever you want, but he knows that in his heart, love keeps on believing, keeps on hoping. Because he knows that love is sufficient. This grace that's extended is sufficient. Because it's a grace that isn't expecting anything from you. Freely, you have these. And once you know that, then one by one, those one-liner job descriptions that have been written in you that you should do, must do, have to do, supposed to do. You see, love lets you. Love gives you permission to let it go. Give it back to the person. Mom, it was really good. I understand that you mean well, but this came from what your mom did to you. See, I asked my father, and he said, "It's not me." You see, this love isn't requiring that. It's not expecting you, even if you think that you can do that. It's not saying then, well, then go on in. At least do something. It's not expecting that either. In fact, what he's hoping is that you will cease for your own sake, for your own benefit, to live by these things that have been written on your heart, that you've acquired, that you've accumulated, that you've picked up along the way, and they become the list of works that you feel obliged to have to fulfill. But I don't know why, I just feel the pain. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Well, you should all know. Oh, but that's how easily it's done. Somebody just You should all know this. You know, we get in high school, all the things that we should know, but I don't know. So, entering into the rest of God, you see, it has to do with realizing that this love, this expression, this grace, this foundational, this before time, before creation, before the foundation of the world, this love has been established as a statement of ground, as a measuring stick for all of our acceptance, for all of our worth, for all of our graciousness to be received. The answer is yes, come on. So you hear what about it doesn't matter. You see, the whole thing of God restoring us back to the original place in his heart. See, is that it doesn't come with a list of things that you have to do first. It doesn't come with hurdles in front that you have to jump over so you can eventually get to the finish line. You understand one really simple thing. It's a simple thing that all of creation having relegated to being not worth much. And the statement is this. He understands that apart from him, you can't do it. It's a simple thing. You see, he understands that the nature of being created and being in him and him being in you is that none of it works without him. And so as soon as we remove him, then we have to put something else in its place that will still get us the same result. And so that's the thing that we've been taught and we've accumulated over time. Well, you know, what I've discovered is if you just do this, and if you just read, like you just read once a month, and even if you just do, pray, just pray like, even for 10 minutes a day. They seem like really simple things, but over a lifetime, you see, well, I don't have any room left in my heart for the word of God, for him to speak to me of love, of tenderness, of acceptance, of belonging. That comes with no expectation. See, this love is unconditional. It doesn't have fine print that we haven't read. It doesn't have, clause 1, clause 2, clause 3. This love, this is pure love. It's not expecting that you're going to have to, in order to receive it. The least you can do is stand up. Because you're okay and be released. While you were in sins, I chose you. I restored you back to that place where your heart is, as we've washed and bathed and cleansed, and those things that have been written there are falling away. They're being removed from you so that when you look there, you will see there's nothing else that has to do. Father, you are loving me right now. In this current position that I'm in, with my loose ends, with my things that I haven't tidied up, with my stuff that I'm still been working on for the last 2 years, with the things that I just heard there's a new list of things that I'm supposed to be doing that I better do those as well. See, and he says, so who told you that? Because I'm pretty sure that what I established was, you see, before the creation of the world, I loved you. I chose you. While you were yet sinners, in the midst of you trying to live this life and do it all apart from me, you see, love is still loving you. Love is still depending. He's got all the money that is writing on number 7, red. And it's this love. This love is enough. This love will wash away every weight of expectation. Every law that's being inscribed in your heart. Who told you that? You see, it's a reference back to the fall of man, which can be summarized in a very simple passage of scripture that says they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. truth of God being, I love you, and that's enough. The lie being, as long as you do this and this and this, and a couple of others. And just to be sure, Bible college would be a good thing. And just to be, pass it on, then maybe begin to develop it as a list of expectations that you're going to pass on to your children and your children's children. You see, we're having a preaching refresher. James was teaching us on, he said this is the reason why we have to believe. We need to believe. The reason why we do believe what we preach is because that belief in our heart is what imparts it to the people that we're speaking to. If you don't believe it, then it's just, it'll just bounce off the wall. Or it won't even get that far. So we're preaching, we're teaching, we're talking about the things that He has written in our hearts. And the love that He loves is unconditional. Its foundation was from the very beginning of the beginning of the beginning. It hasn't been added in somewhere along the way. So in the fact that it's foundational, you see, if you believe what it is, if you believe that you should fulfill these expectations, and I must, and I have to, but you don't understand, this has been, our whole family is like this. You don't understand, the church that I go to, this is what we practice. You don't understand, the organisation that I'm with, the ministry I'm involved with, we all do this. You don't understand. We've all drunk from the same cup of expectation. The problem is, you see, for me, and this was probably the worst part of this whole journey for me, is that for the first time, after having been involved in ministry for more than 40 years, you see, the biggest thing that I've struggled with is this list of expectations that lives in constantly condemns, and constantly means that I fall short, and constantly means that I fail. And I try very hard to overcome that. So, my mum said to me one day, I think our son was probably 3 or 4 years old, and she just said to me, and I don't even remember what I was saying or doing with him, but it just seemed to me like nothing. And my mum just turned to me, she said, you're really hard on that boy. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about. You see, because of my frame of reference is, I hardly hit him at all. See, compared to the number of hittings that I had, see, comparatively, mine's like this and his is like that. I said, there is not that whole thing. I'm not abusive, I'm not harsh, I don't feel like I'm punishing, I don't feel like, he gets, there's a lot more leniency. My mum just said, you're really hard on that boy. Well, how can you be hard? He's only 3, he's 4. What do you mean hard? I don't smack him around, I don't threaten him openly. I must admit, when he was first born, we took him to church, first time to church, and all bundled up with that little sort of, what do they call it, that papoose thing, with the handles on it. And so, we always have people who come late in our church, to cultural things. So we're sitting in the seat, me and Sonia, and there's Luke and papoose, and so we're in the middle of worship, and we get a tap on the shoulder, So we're in the middle of worship, so I just move along like that, and so without realising it, we've moved right along, and the papoose is now up behind me, and so at the end of the worship, and the people have come in, I just sat down right on his face. You know how babies do that? They go, no sound comes out, no sound. For about 30 seconds, and then the next minute,